The bench press is probably one of the most common exercises performed. However, oftentimes people will perform it incorrectly, leading to a lack of progression and sometimes even injury. Today, I'm going to give you a 3-part tutorial. We're going to cover everything from the setup, the unrack, the descent, and the actual press itself. And at the end of the video, I'm also going to provide you 3 variations for you to try on your next bench day. Let's go. Hey everybody, welcome back to Dark Horse. My name is Brandon. So today's video is all about the bench press. I'm going to give a full tutorial and I'm going to give 3 variations at the end of the video. But I want you to know most of the demonstrations in this video are going to be done with an Elite FTS neutral grip cambered bar. That is by far my favorite bar to press with. That's just simply personal preference, guys. Everything I'm going to go over in this video, you can certainly apply to a standard barbell and even dumbbells. So just know that moving forward. Let's get started. Okay, so the first part of the setup is going to be the bar height. We really don't want a bar to be placed too low because it's going to be very awkward for us. We're not even really going to be able to get our arms underneath there, and we're going to end up having to press this bar off of us before we actually even begin our exercise. Not ideal at all. You also don't want the bar to be placed too high because if you do, you're going to have to outstretch your arms completely. You never want your arms completely locked out, and if it's really high, you may even have to protract your shoulders in order to get that bar out of the rack. You can get away with these things at lighter weights, but guys, when you start loading up heavier lifts, you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to put a tremendous amount of stress on your shoulders. Just don't do it. Place the bar at an appropriate level. You want a slight bend in your elbows, and you want to be able to pull that bar out of the rack. More on that in just a moment. Next part of your setup is going to be your hand placement. You always want to make sure that you stack your joints. Have your wrist directly over your elbows. You do not want to have your hands too close or too wide. It's going to put a tremendous amount of stress on your shoulder, and you're just not going to be very strong to press from that position. Now we're going to be talking about foot placement. Yes, that's right, foot placement, even in a bench press and upper body exercise. You want to put your feet flat on the floor. I'm not a fan of putting my feet behind me and getting on my tiptoes. That doesn't work for me. If it works for you, hey, rock on. But put your feet flat on the floor, get them firmly planted in the floor because we're going to apply force. More on that later on. Next in our setup, we're going to be talking about upper back tension. What you want to do here is create as much tension in your upper back and in your lats as you possibly can. What I want you to think about doing is depressing and retracting your shoulder blades. This is going to put your chest in front of your shoulders. This is an optimal pressing position. You do not want to press with a flat, sunken in chest. That is a terrible position for your shoulders, and you're just not very strong that way. So think of it in terms of a big chest, or poofing your chest up, or whatever, how you want to think about it, but get that chest up and make sure the back of your shoulders are resting on the bench. Next up, we're going to talk about grip. I want you to make sure you try and crush this bar in your hands. Grip is going to allow you to produce and transfer force from your body into that bar. Get that bar in the meaty part of your hand, get a nice tight grip around it, and get ready to set your brace, which is the next step. Okay, so the last step in our setup is going to be breathing and bracing. You're going to want to take a nice deep breath in through your nose, a nice deep diaphragmatic breath, and then I want you to focus on pushing your ribs down. At that point, I want you to brace as if someone were about to punch you in the gut. Another way to think about it is creating as much intra-abdominal pressure as possible. We want to do this for 2 main reasons. Number 1 is going to help protect your low back. Yes, a bench will absolutely hurt your low back if you're not careful. And number 2, it helps create total body rigidity and tension, which again, the more tension you can create, the more force you can produce. So that concludes the setup portion of this tutorial. Listen guys, the setup portion was a little bit longer than the rest of the parts of it because if you can nail your setup, then the lift will take care of itself. Next up, we've got the unrack and the descent. I want you to think about actively pulling this bar out of the J-hooks or off of the pins, whichever you're doing. But I want you to make sure you're engaging your lats whenever you do this. Again, you have work to create tension in your upper back. You want to keep that tension. You do not want to lose it. If you are poorly positioned underneath this bar, then you will try to tricep press it out of the rack. That's not what you want. Slide yourself down the bench and make sure you're actively pulling to get the bar out of the rack. In terms of the descent, I want you to think about pulling that bar down to your chest like you see me doing here in an inverted or a bodyweight row. It's literally the exact same movement. You absolutely do not want to haphazardly allow that bar to collapse down to your chest. That is not what you want to do. You want to think about compressing a spring, right? If I were to compress a spring like this, when I let that spring go, what's going to happen? A ton of force is going to go in the opposite directions, right? It's the same thing you want to think about. As you pull, as you row that bar down to your chest, you're just waiting for it to hit your chest or get to whatever depth you prefer. And at that point, that's whenever you're going to drive in the opposite direction with as much force as possible. So again, on the descent, think of rowing the bar to your chest and think of compressing a spring, because as soon as you get down there, we're going in the opposite direction. Okay, so the third part of the tutorial is going to be the concentric, or the actual pressing portion of the movement. What I want you to do here is think leg drive. You must initiate leg drive. Leg drive is the most underrated thing when it comes to bench pressing. You can think of it as shoving your body straight up off that bench. You can also think of it as doing a seated leg extension. Either way, just make sure you initiate the leg drive. When you do this, you want to do this at the same time as you are pressing that bar up off of your chest. And I promise you, it will go a long way in helping you to press more weight and feel stronger just in general. Okay, so now that we've got the tutorial out of the way, I want to give you 3 variations for you to try it on your next bench press day or your next upper body push day, whatever how your workouts are structured. But the first one's going to be for strength, the second one is going to be for hypertrophy, and the third one is going to be for power. So first up for strength, we're going to work a pause bench press. All you're going to do, you're going to go through your setup, all your cues just like we talked about in this video, and you're going to unrack, drop that bar down, pause for 3 to 5 seconds, actual seconds here, not a count of 3 or a count of 5. 3 to 5 seconds, and you're going to drive that bar up and off your chest. You will find that you will have to use probably a lot lighter weights than you're typically using, especially for a standard bench press, but this is one of the best ways to drive up just raw, brute strength. It's also great for training strength coming out of the hole, so to speak, right? So if you're stuck on your bench press down, right, if you can't even get it off your chest, this is a great way to help train that and may even lead to a new PR for you. Okay, so the second variation I want to talk to you about is a 1.5 rep bench press. What you're going to do, you're going to unrack that bar, drop it down, you're going to come halfway up, stop, and then come back down, stop, and then come all the way up out of your press. What we are doing here, we are increasing the time under tension, and we know for a fact that is one of the most effective ways to build muscle. The third variation is going to utilize the CAT method, compensatory acceleration training. Basically, guys, all we're going to do, we're going to load a bar up super light here. 50 to 70% of your 1 rep max is typically the range, and you're going to perform multiple sets of low reps, typically 2 or 3 reps per set. Usually I'll break this down with like an 8x3 or a 10x2 or something like that, but what you're going to do is you're going to speed that bar up on the concentric. So on the actual pushing part of the bench press, you're going to do that as quickly as possible. So what you would do is you would unrack your bar, normal speed eccentric, and then 1, 2, 3 very fast reps, or again, if you're doing a 10x2, ever how you decide to break your rep and set scheme up. But that's the idea there. Listen, anytime you're talking about power training, you need to understand as soon as that bar slows down, or as soon as the movement loses quality, right? Like say you lose form, you lose technique, you lose your brace, you lose the tension in your upper back, whatever, or the bar speed slows down, you've got to cut the set. It's over at that point. These should not be grinder reps. Power training is all about speed of the bar. So there you go, a full bench press tutorial as well as 3 variations at the end for you to try on your next bench press day. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you leave a thumbs up or subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions for me, leave me a comment down below. Until next time, be a dark horse.